Welcome to Sleuths, where every week we discuss true crime content across the internet. I'm Adrianna,
I'm Jasmine.
and this week we're going to talk about Netflix's Dirty Money, episode 2 of season 1, Payday.
Yes.
Lock his ass up. Lock his ass up. You're going to jail. You're going to jail.
The feds say Tucker personally gained hundreds of millions of dollars, which he used to fund his racing team, and that he lives a lavish lifestyle.
So usually on my channel, I discuss fashion history, and fashion and how it pertains to recent events overall. But every other week, I'm going to be joined by my friend Jasmine, where we're going to discuss one of my other true loves, which is true crime. Be it white collar crime or whodunits, we're just going to talk about our favorite episodes or certain episodes of true crime shows. Maybe one day we'll do podcasts. Who knows? And yeah, so first of all, the episode opens with Scott Tucker pelotoning for his life. um, while the feds come repossess all of his race cars. What did you think the show was going to be about when it first opened?
Seeing that he was so detached from everything that was happening around him, he had a very vigorous workout going on. Man was pouring sweat. Really did not know where this was gonna lead.
That was also when his wife, who was so annoying every time she was on the screen, she
so.
talked about how she would never buy something that the government repossessed from somebody else, no matter how they got it, no matter if they were ill-gotten gains. She would never do that, and she doesn't know what kind of person would do that. And the whole anytime during this episode that she talks, she could have not talked. I mean,
this is very true.
Believe all women.
Like, just shut up.
But also, not right now. You have on a Gucci pashmina. You want me to feel bad for you? Like, that was crazy. But so that's when we learned that Scott Tucker made over $400 million by being a predatory lender, basically. So anytime you are on the internet and you see like ads for payday loans or Montel Williams endorsed money mutual during his shows, like that was basically Scott Tucker behind it. I mean, not all the time. Allegedly. Don't sue me. I don't have anything. But that was about Scott Tucker. They explained that he made the $400 million by charging 2 to 3 times like predatory lending, or 2 to 3 times the mafia would charge on their loans. Yes. Which interesting. So they introduced a trucker from like small town USA. I don't even remember where he said he was from, but he kind of describes how like he needed $500. They told him that like in a short term loan he was going to be expecting to pay like $690 back. And so he's like, okay. His whole thing the whole time was like, I borrowed the money, so obviously I don't have a problem paying the money back. I just want to pay back what we agreed that I was going to pay back on. And it just was like they started to harass him. And then that's when we learned about loan renewal fees.
Apparently, if I don't get the loan paid in full, they charge me $75 to roll the loan over and renew it. Those loan fees that they had already been taking out of my account, I thought were payments.
So, may I interject? So the thing about this customer was he set up a payment plan to pay about $120 a month or $120 out of each of his paychecks. So they had already taken this 4 times. So by his estimation, he only owed them about $40 and he was done. But unbeknownst to him about the renewal fees that they would put on.
Well, first of all, the only reason that it was brought to his attention that like it was some funny business going on is because he tried to pay for something else and it got like denied. Like he didn't have the money for it. And when he called the bank to see why he didn't have the money for it, the bank said that the bank said that the company tried to take $950 out of his account, basically. So then he's like, okay, well, what the fuck is going on?
That's his phone call to the company to find out that, oh no, you still owe all the money you were paying. None of it went towards your principal on your on your loan. You were just paying in interest and renewal fees.
Another thing I liked about this episode is that it was a big deal apparently. It was a big deal because of the settlement that they came to, but they had so much media coverage of it. And in one of the first clips of media coverage they showed, it explains how the Indian tribes were involved. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, where did the Indians, like, what?
The three tribes that they were working with were in Oklahoma and Nebraska. And so when consumers called in to talk about their loans, representatives were told to pretend that they were in Oklahoma or Nebraska.
There was a lady in Colorado who got two loans from two different companies, but then she found out they weren't even registered to give the loans out in the state of Colorado, basically. So she told the attorney general. The attorney general found out the address of the company and they sent them a letter. Then they got a letter back from a tribe of Native Americans who said, hey, no, chill. That's not really them that's doing the loan thing. That's actually us. And because we're Native American, we have sovereign immunity. So the state cannot charge us for this. Sovereign immunity says the state government doesn't have the right to bring Indians to court and enforce their state law. The federal government can, but the state government can't. The truck driver ends up telling them when they start harassing him, like, you cannot do this. It's illegal to harass people. Apparently it's illegal. Scam now is illegal, but anyway. So so apparently he told them you can't do this, and when he told them you cannot harass me like this, they said, well, yes we can, because we're actually owned by Native Americans. So.
And we're in Oklahoma and Montana.
Yeah. Also, the way that he said, when he started talking about the Native American tribes, it really gave red state vibes.
Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, I don't care. Martian. You need to abide by the laws, regardless as to whether you are a nation within a nation. You're still in the United States, and you still should follow United States law.
Because he was like, just because you are a sovereign land in a sovereign land doesn't mean that you can't abide by your own rules. You're still in the United States of America, like, which they were here first. So
we could go on and on about this.
So eventually they do break down the how the customers were being charged. So let's say you did a $300 loan, but the finance charge was $90, meaning you were to pay back $390 in total. After 2 weeks on the payday, the consumer would see $90 come out of their account, and this happened every 2 weeks for 2 months, taking out $360, and then they would add $30 to it. On the next pay period, they would have $140 coming out, $50 toward the principal, plus the $90 finance charge, and that's when the consumer usually calls in. Then because they didn't pay the loan off within the first payday, when they charged them the first amount, they didn't pay the loan off in that time, so now they are paying for the loan renewal fees. And that goes back to the beginning where we were talking about that it doesn't go toward the principal. If you don't pay the loan back by the first payday in full, then you just are now doing the loan renewal thing, and that's when it goes into the cycle. So if you initially borrowed $300 from them, in the end, if it scaled up the way that they predicted it to, you would actually be paying like upwards of $975 on the $300 to $500 loan. So the takedown was for the FTC was the smoking gun document. It was a document that basically showed, we've all worked at call centers here.
Definitely.
We've all worked at call centers. So when you work at a call center, they usually give you like stuff to put on your cubicles that have like what you should say in certain situations.
Suggested
certain policies. So the money back document was basically breaking down that the employees knew that it was a scam. They knew how the customers were going to be charged the whole time, but they just didn't want to communicate that with the customers. So FTC asked customers to send in whatever documents they got from the loan companies. And they could basically read that in the loan companies that Scott owned, it wasn't very clear verbiage. Like, it wasn't stuff that the regular consumer would know. Like, you would basically need a lawyer to go through it. And then in court, the companies would pull out certain sentences and make it seem like it was like that on the form the whole time. But in all actuality, they pieced out the most, I guess, the easiest sentences to talk about. And then they pieced it together to make it look like, oh, look, we already explained, like, it was this simple. They knew how much we were going to charge them out of this, but in actuality, even the lawyers was like, what the hell is going on here? So
it's some bullshit.
So then they had an employee named Carolyn Williams who basically was a whistleblower, started wearing a wire. How sick do you have to be to wear a wire for
a call
predatory
center
lending? Like, what the fuck is going on in this call center? But she started wearing a wire where her managers are basically admitting that Scott Tucker was the head of the criminal enterprise, even though he was the whole time making it seem like the Native American tribes were over. He literally threw the blame on everybody except for himself.
They weren't my employees. The employees that work for me work on the software program and the platform.
Gotta hear both sides here. But anyway.
But he also had shell company. So if you got a shell company, like,
oh yeah, like
come on,
one of the police officers was like, it was like a shell company wrapped in a shell company, and then it led to the Native American tribes. Like, every time they mention the Native American tribes in this docuseries, I just thought it was so random.
Because they just interject them in the most random moments. Just
Scott was spending this money on straight bullshit. This man was
cars.
He had cars. He had a jet. He spent $8 million on a house in Aspen or something. Again, his wife had on Gucci Pashminas the whole time.
The house they lived in was lavish.
It was huge. The cars they were repossessing were huge. Scott might have been a sociopath, but that's neither here nor there.
But the whole time he does not care about anything that's going on. It's like, what do they mean I broke laws? What do you mean people were poor because of me? No, I would never. Is that a crime?
Fucking take it. I don't give a fuck about that
thing. But then he got hit with the $1.3 billion judgment. And it was like the biggest FTC prosecution in history. And long story short, Scott got sentenced to 17 years, and his brother unalived himself. But let's not harp on that part. I tried to skip over that. I tried to keep it light. But that did happen, though. When his brother found out that they were in trouble, he made the ultimate sacrifice.
Now let's reflect on that. Just because Scott states that it is the government's fault from the pressure of the investigation that his brother unalived himself. Now, I could be wrong here. I'm no professional. But seeing that they were charged with a $1.3 billion settlement and their looming poorness was knocking, I feel like that was probably one of the primary reasons he decided to just seek other ventures.
That was just the first time during the whole thing that Scott even seemed like a human being. Like, when they start asking about his brother and he started talking about it, I was like, oh, he's crying. He's literally crying. The rest of the show, I was like, oh, this man is a sociopath. Like, and then that's one thing I didn't even mention. His lawyer is very, like, involved here, like, the whole time. His lawyer got indicted too.
Tucker's attorney, Timothy Muir, left federal court and sped off in a black pickup. Muir is in trouble because the feds say he helped Tucker avoid federal laws by setting up some of Tucker's payday loan businesses to look like they were owned by Indian tribes.
His lawyer was actually sentenced to 7 years in prison for helping him to set up his companies as being owned by Native American tribes. So
his criminal lawyer was a criminal lawyer, if you will.
I really, really now want to look up and see if there are any other cases where the lawyer goes to jail with the person they were representing.
Donald Trump is a good one to look into. Note to self, Donald Trump is a good one.
They also were trying to give them the death penalty. The death penalty. Now, I have been one to love a good white collar crime situation from time to time, but the death penalty is crazy. I mean, stealing from the poor is crazy, and me, a fellow poor, I really was offended by this whole thing. Like there was no need to do this to poor people. But death penalty, bro, I don't know of any other white collar crime that got that.
That was a bit intense, I will say. People being poor and not knowing when they're going to eat or have lights and stuff, that's equally intense.
Yeah, but yeah, true that.
I feel like the thought of at least me knowing that he thinks he's going to die works for me. Like, am I going to die or not? That's a lot to hold as a person.
This was a crazy episode of this. There's a lot of episodes in this series, and maybe I'll choose another one, but this is my favorite one because, like I said, I mean, it was a crime, but it wasn't the most, like, outlandish crime. Like, it's not crazy to think that somebody would use sovereign immunity to get over on the government. Like, it is a good idea. I don't want to be that guy, but you could probably use sovereign immunity to get out of a lot of crimes.
True.
Keep that in your noggin, okay? But not me, IRS. Not me. I'm not that kind of girl. If the police are watching this, I would never do that. I would never do that, okay?
One thing I say that I think is cool, or maybe not cool, about this episode, but I think it was cool to see a different type of narcissist at work.
Oh, yeah.
I am a fan of the murder, gore, true crime. Okay, fan seems a little bit aggressive of a word. I am interested in the bloodier side of true crime. So to see a narcissist use his narcissism in other ways, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy.
So what do you think that Scott's fatal flaw was?
Where to begin? I think the fatal flaw was the aggression of the loan, like the loan renewal.
Yeah.
I think it would have been it was a very successful enterprise, but I think it could have had a little bit more longevity if the loan may be renewed only twice with people, and then they allowed them to pay it off and then let them decide to come back again if they already know what kind of to expect. So I think that they probably could have had longevity if they would have just kind of screwed over some people because they were already going for desperate people. Yeah. So if you're desperate enough, you'll use that service again. So I think had they not continued the shtick for so long, it could have gone a little bit longer. That's greed.
Like that, I was like, wait. At first, I thought you were on the side of the customer, and then it really truly escalated. At the end, I was like, where are you taking me? I think the fatal flaw was fucking over poor people. There are so many other different ways that you could have used this. Again, you could have used this sovereign immunity to do other stuff. But I guess it's easy to rely on like people's need, desperation to need more money or to take, like, because the truck driver, he borrowed the money to take care of his family. He had like 4 kids. Right. And again, in small town USA. So, I mean, yeah, again, as a fellow poor, I do not appreciate people taking advantage of the poor. But yeah, so that's the end of this. You should really watch the episode, because it was good. There were some other things in between that happened that I just felt like wasn't important to what had really happened in the end. I told you what was important. That's it. Anyway, if you still have your Netflix subscription, make sure to tune in to Dirty Money Season 1, Episode 2, Payday. And Netflix should pay me for this because I'm not getting paid for this, and I'm shouting this out. And people don't really like y'all like that. Oh yeah, she'll get half of it.
I'm here too.
She'll have us. But the people who come here for me, not